So I've set up a temporary string across the Hoophouse bars. It's actually gonna go from this back bar across to here, and each one will have its own string for the design I'm doing this year. But at least this gets them supported right now. A few of them had fallen over because they're getting really large. And so I wanted to get the spools from Johnny Select Seeds on there. They're pretty easy to use. I like the spools better than the tomahawks or whatever they're called, where they you have to fold them down because it makes much more of a jerking motion. And this was much easier for me to let the spool out and hold the string and just slide it in as I pinch the top to let it out. I do have these clips here, also from Johnny Seeds, and so they have little teeth. You can see. You put them around the string, and what that does is it makes it so that it won't be able to go up or down on the string. And then it has a little tooth on the end of the pinch, and it clicks in. And then your tomatoes allows to have some wiggle room inside the hoop. As you can see here, it's still growing. It's not going to be constrained to that string. I didn't have any issues last year with these chewing the stems. That was a concern of mine that I was watching for. So now you're going to see a bunch of suckers. So there's a couple tips that I've learned from YouTube and from doing this last year. You never want to prune your tomatoes really for this top piece. These top two suckers, leave them until you've put a clip ahead above them. Because what can happen is, especially if you're lower and leaning, you clip them up, then you lower, and then you move your spool. When that happens, there's a chance you may break off this top stem. And so by leaving the suckers not pruned, then all of a sudden you're redirecting the energy, and this sucker here will become your main stem, and at least your tomato will still move forward and continue to grow. So the other thing on the tips is to never put one of these clips underneath a fruit set here. Because what will happen is if the hook's here, the plastic hoop is here, this fruit set is going to lean over as the fruit gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and then it will likely snap at that point. So you always want to make sure that you're setting the hoop underneath a leaf, not a fruit set. So this is again mostly used for indeterminate tomatoes, so these will continue to grow as long as they have nutrients and they're healthy. And so they'll grow for an indeterminate amount of time, and they don't have a determined amount of fruit that it will produce. So that means these 4 tomatoes in theory should still be growing here in our hoop house here in north central Massachusetts come November if I let them, which is pretty crazy. So we're zone 5B, but the hoop house does add weeks on each end of our season. So at this point, I'm going to come back through, because I'm not lowering and leaning these, right? Because they continue to grow all the way up to the spools before I'm going to lower and lean. I'm going to come back through and I'm going to prune off quite a bit of growth here. Probably everything from about here down on this plant. All the leaves, everything. So it's just going to be a vine. So it's focusing its growth up, and it's going to start focusing its growth on some fruit. So that's the current plan. I'll check back in a few minutes. Quick note, one thing I do get asked is, can you replant the suckers? And the answer is yes. So all the tomato stems have these little furs. I don't know if you can see them or not. And they will actually create roots. So you can put this in a little glass of water, or you can put it right into dirt, as long as you keep it really damp for the first probably week or so, and then it will form its own roots, and then you have another tomato plant. I don't need any more tomato plants. I have 85 or 86 in the ground right now, so I'm not going to keep these, but that is an option for you. That's all of the suckers and leaves that I pruned. You're going to see a big difference now, and they probably look a lot like a little undergrown. This is actually what you want when you're doing lower and lean. So just lots and lots of pruning. And I try to come out here and do it probably once a week in the middle of the summer. Actually, even in the early summer. I might even prune a little bit more than that, like every 5 or 6 days maybe. But it really just depends on the plant. I don't stick to a set schedule. I try to let the plants tell me what they need. The other thing I didn't note was you don't need to actually bury the string. You don't need to do any of that. I've never had to do that, so that's great. Now I can take these bamboo stakes out. And it's a pretty prolific way to grow. It does help with cutting down on blight issues and things like that. Anytime you see any leaf issues at all, you can prune them off if you're growing them like this. Even actually, if you're growing them in a bush, you could still prune them off. So if you see a bad spot, this I wouldn't even worry about something on the leaf. But if you see a bad spot on a leaf, you can actually just come here and snip the end of it, and you still have a lot of growth going on. So I do need to feed these guys. I'll be on a every 2-week schedule, and then for an all-purpose, down-to-earth granular fertilizer that we get at the local hydroponic store called Emerald City in Westminster, Mass. Then I will also add some Cal Mag into the water at regular intervals. Some people use that every single time. I don't find that I need to. And I do need to come in and weed around the base. And then I need to add some of the really good compost from this year back into this bed. And then I'll be planting the peppers, and the goal will be to plant the peppers in between these rows in their own lines. So as we lower and lean these down, so this one would get lowered, and then the vine would end up laying right down here on the soil, on the compost, and it will actually spur roots, and then you'll have it coming back up. And then as it grows up to the top of the spool, you'd let some more line out and do it again. And so these have technically 14 feet of foot space from where they are right now, maybe a little under that. This is a 16-foot length hoop house that Jace built. And then they also still have the 6 feet up, at least, to the top of the hoop house. So these have more than enough space in theory and to keep going. But I thought I would share this again. I know I did videos on it last year, but since it started a new season and I'm doing these a little bit differently, because they're 4 different types, I'm not doing them in a circle. A lot of times you'll do like a block of 4, block of 6, and then you'll just move them, and they make like a wreath on the ground as you circle them around and around and around, which is what we're going to do out here with this really long bed, is do lower and lean for all 50 tomatoes. And so they're just going to keep on moving down the line, and then they'll get to the end and move over to the back row and come back. So if you have any questions, let me know. Johnny Seeds, I think, has a good video on this too. That's where I got all the supplies. They've been easy to deal with and ship really fast. So if you do reuse your clips or your spools, even cut your spools, it's not worth it for the tomatoes for the next season. And there's plenty of string, you can reline these. But if you do reuse any of the pieces, make sure that you do a light bleach, watered down bleach solution end of the season or beginning of the season, and then clear just regular rinse water multiple times before, so you don't carry any diseases in case you did have any blight or anything else going into the next season. So let's see how these tomatoes grow.